Yo, so I got the Superlight 2 in a few weeks back, and I've been playing with it on and off since. It's been solid, and I've really enjoyed using it. Right now, it probably is my favorite mouse. Honestly, it's still very much a Superlight, so if you liked the original, you will still like this one. 3 years in the making, I was thinking that Logitech would have had something more impressive cooking up, but at first glance, it's identical. They were even too lazy to update the branding, so for $160, is it worth picking up? By the end of the video, I hope I can answer that question for you. At the front, we do now have the USB-C port, thank God. The Superlight was the only micro USB device I still had, so having to dig up a charger was always a pain in the ass. This really is just a quality of life improvement, as everything on my desk now can be charged with the same cable. The Superlight's battery has never been bad, but it was improved this time around. You can expect to get somewhere around 95 hours of battery. This is compared to 70. That's not a bad bump at all, but I don't think that this should be a deciding factor. Weighing it up on my scale, it comes in at just over 59 grams, so this is a 3 to 4 gram difference from the OG Superlight, although if you do take off the bottom puck, that'll shed off about another 1.5 grams, bringing the total weight down to 58 grams. Underneath, there still is that power play wireless charger. Now, I remember I bought like a wireless charging dock for that, and I've used it maybe once or twice. I can't imagine there's still that many people using it. I feel like if they really wanted to be competitive with the weight, they could have just removed this entirely. Holding the two mice side by side, I can notice the weight differences, but when I'm actually playing, that 5 grams isn't going to make me play any better, and I really most likely won't even notice it. I think how light your mouse is way overhyped, when shape and mouse feet are really what make the biggest differences, at least in my opinion. This is, of course, the same exact shape as we saw on the original Superlight, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It is the reason that mouse was so widely used. It's just a great safe option. I've used a bunch of Ergo mice and others like the Pulsar X2 or Razer Viper, but I still have found myself just enjoying the Superlight the most in recent months. For me, where I found the most drastic change with the Superlight 2 is these new optical mount switches. In theory, these are going to be more reliable than the Omron 20Ms because they shouldn't be double clicking at all. These have been the source of some controversy, which I don't really understand. Yes, they are heavier, but even after a pretty minimal amount of use, they begun to loosen up. It's not like you can't still spam these. I was doing multiple click per second tests and saw no difference between the two. Me personally, I've come to actually enjoy mouse switches that have a little bit of weight to them because they give you that tactile feedback that for FPS games I've always enjoyed. I don't know, it just feels so much nicer to go around and snipe or tap on a pistol. The Omrons have a softer click comparatively, and they produce significantly less noise. Now, there is one downside to the heaviness of these new switches, and that's depending on your grip style, you may have to push down significantly harder than normal. At the very top of the mouse buttons, you do have to put down some force, but towards the middle and the bottom, it feels perfect. Other than that, the buttons themselves are completely unchanged. They still move around the same and have that smooth coating. It would have been nice to have something similar to Razer's mice, but that said, it still does not feel bad in the hand. We still have these same garbage mushy side buttons. It's confusing why they didn't make any improvement to these because they just don't feel good. They have a considerable amount of pre-travel that makes quickly pressing them in feel much worse than some other gaming mice. The scroll wheel actually did get a small update. It's the same physically, but they must have added lube or something because it does feel a tad bit smoother. It's very subtle. I didn't even notice it until Boardsy pointed it out, but each step does feel less snappy. I do think that movement feels a little bit better, but it's nothing drastic. Flipping it over, somehow Logitech managed to make these stock feet even worse. So they didn't change the material. It's that exact same scratchy, non-additive PTFE, but now you can't use any of the replacement skates that you already own. So the piece underneath the mouse buttons on the puck, those are the same, but at the back, instead of it wrapping around in a circle, it now makes more of a U shape. This doesn't seem to make it glide any better, and it really just forces us to wait until new replacements are out. It's fine to play with right now, but when I go back to my Tiger Ice feet, which were only like $10 on Amazon by the way, it's a noticeable improvement. With these stock feet, I can feel all of the rough spots on my mouse pad. The new Hero 2 sensor is an improvement over the original. with the main difference being the 2000 Hz polling rate. Now, I honestly haven't noticed a difference in game between a 1000 Hz polling rate. It does feel very responsive, but in a blind test, there's no way that I'd be able to distinguish the two. A lot of reviewers have been giving Logitech shit for not raising it even higher to 4000 Hz. I'm not sure how much a difference that makes. I've never tried a mouse with that polling rate, but it would have been a welcomed upgrade. Razer has already had that implemented for a while, so on paper, the sensor is lagging behind. There were some other improvements though. The IPS tracking speed is 500 up from 400, and the max DPI has increased to 32,000 from 25,600. GHub also gives you a little bit more flexibility in customizing the sensor. So once you're into GHub, you can press onto the Superlight 2, and at first glance, there's a lot more options here than there was with the original Superlight. Really, all you could do was change the DPI and mess with some of the bindings. So you can set multiple different DPI stages here. Of course, the lowest option is 100, the highest is 32,000, and now you can set them in increments of 5, so if you do try to enter something like 1551, it is going to round that. Do note that by default, the polling rate is set to 1000, so just put that up to 2000, you'll be all set. Something interesting is that you can actually calibrate the sensor so that it feels exactly like any other mouse you have. What you have to do is line up the two mice, click into GHub, just move them side by side. It's gonna be a little hard to do it in one motion. You can see here, it was tested at 700 DPI, but then it actually adjusted it to 758. In my opinion, this new sensor isn't revolutionary, and it's not something I think that anybody should be running out for. Maybe if you play significantly more than I do and are really competitive, some of these improvements will be noticeable to you, but if you're just a casual gamer, I don't think that you should pay attention too much to these stats. So after a few weeks of use to answer the question of should you buy this, if you already have the OG Superlight, I'm very inclined to say no, mostly because the only real improvements are with the switches and USBC. If you love a heavier switch with some tactile feedback and are playing all the time that you're constantly charging, maybe you'll want this, but if it weren't for the fact I make these videos, I couldn't see myself buying this. Now, say that you don't own the Superlight, you're gonna love this mouse. It's a slightly refined version, and I'm excited to be maining it. Although, if you don't really care about the new features, the original version is still being sold and now at a discount. Right now, it's going for $110 on Amazon, which isn't a bad deal. That is still a fantastic mouse. That's what I think, but let me know down in the comments whether you'll be picking up the Superlight 2. I might make some upgrades to it, definitely with the stock feet, but the side button mount is actually supposed to be pretty easy, so subscribe if that's something you want to see. Otherwise, I've been Cole, and I appreciate you for sticking around. I'll catch you guys later. Take care.